Okay, we're looking at Eric Johnson's 1962 Chevy pickup, day 4. We're going to be doing a little bit of driving today. We're going to start off here at Paul's Place, California Automotive Engine Warehouse. They're over here in my neck of the woods. As you can see, they've got a lot of stuff for high performance parts. So we're going to pick up our igniter 2 today, and maybe I'll stick it in the distributor today, or maybe I'll do it tomorrow. So stay tuned and see what we get. Okay, so now we're down in Corona, just off of Park Ridge at Brothers, and we're going to pick up some of our parts. Okay, so we're back at the shop, and I'm going to pick up a lot of the sheet metal and stuff. So what I'm going to do is start with my front fenders. Now, Eric, when he bought this truck, he got some front fenders for free, but it's going to be a little difficult to get those to match up with the original style patina to make this white look old and things like that. So what I'm going to do is see if I can save these old fenders. If it was just the rust down at the bottom, that's no big deal, but the dent right in here that doesn't appear to be too bad, we're going to go ahead and hammer that out, see how it's playing, and see if we can go ahead and save this fender. Okay, so a couple of words about knocking out dents. You've got your dolly, and you basically want to think about your dolly as kind of an anvil. If you were going to hammer right on the dolly, what'll happen is it will expand the metal. And if you hammer off to the side, then you can go ahead and you can shape your metal. So what you would do is simply use it as a brace behind or finishing off. So this here's pretty big dent. I don't actually need it just yet. Let's see what we got going on right there. So when I'm hammering dents out, I'm not looking to knock the thing all out at once. I'm just going to slowly work it, tap, 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 until it slowly comes out. There's a mud flap that holds onto the back in this like little thing right here. So they're kind of a weird little clamp that holds those on. What you do is you just take a screwdriver and tap it in a little bit, and you need to spread apart the little clips that hold this on. Okay, so here's what the little clip looks like. So you can see that when it's in the piece, the top here will squeeze together, and that'll make the bottom here fan out, and that's how it holds on. So in order to take it off, just simply spread apart the top of it. That'll bring the bottom in, and you can take it off. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I'll finish it off a little bit more later. Basically, just want to make sure that I can knock the dent out and it wouldn't get weird on me, and I was going to be able to use this fender. So it looks like I can, so I'm going to go ahead and start our rust repair on our front fenders. Now, I don't have the back brace for this just yet, so I'm going to start on the other side. Okay, this is a welder's blanket. It's specifically designed so that when sparks hit it, it doesn't catch on fire, at least not immediately. It still will burn, but not immediately, so just keep your eye on it. I want to make sure that I keep this original patina on the outside. That's why I've got this carpet down, or the blanket down, so that I can make sure I don't scratch it up. Now, you don't necessarily have to take off all these things, but it is going to be best because otherwise how you're going to get the rust that is in between. And good idea too to label all this stuff right side and left side so it's easier to assemble when you put it back together. Over the years, these spears and trim are going to harbor some dirt, and then the moisture, and then the rust. So if you're going this far, you might as well take them apart. Okay, so here is the outside patch panel. I'm not going to be necessarily using all of this. I want to just use the amount that I need. I want to keep as much of the original fender as possible, but I want to make sure I get any rust or dings or dents taken out at the same time. So if you've got additional damage that goes all the way up to here, then go ahead and use the full patch panel, but if not, then don't. Same thing with the fender brakes. If I don't need to use the whole thing, I won't. See, if you remember when the truck was all put together, it looked really nice, everything lined up really nice. So what I'm going to do in order to help ensure that that'll happen is I'll trace the existing edge of the fender right here so that I can duplicate it. So here you can see that we've got the slope and then where the end of it here drops down. So this was a little bit messed up, so I just marked a little more defined where the bottom edge of the fender was. Now let's say, for instance, you've got a truck that is all different doors from here and fenders from there and all that kind of stuff, so you're mix matching a bunch of stuff together. Then what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to trial fit your sheet metal and see if it's all lining up. Okay, so when I ground off, I can see that there were some more pinholes right in here. So I'm going to go up about 2 inches above that, at least 1 or 2 inches above, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut this out right here. And my edge right here is actually looking pretty nice, so I don't even need to cut it straight across. I can cut it up and then over. But if I do cut it up and over, what I want to make sure is that I am going to be cutting it past this edge of the brace right here. The reason being is that this way I'll be able to hammer and dolly the back side of this. If it's behind the brace, I won't be able to do it, and when we weld and the metal shrinks in, it's going to be more difficult to pull out. So when I do this first cut, I'm just going to do it a little bit smaller than I actually need. So I'll only go up about an inch or so. And this is kind of more of an exploratory type of a cut to see if there's more damage underneath or what have you. And then I'll expand it if I need to. So you'll notice when I cut through, I don't just take the cutting wheel and just go all the way down like that. I'm basically just trying to skim, and I'm just trying to cut just the metal that's here because I have the braces underneath that I don't want to damage. Okay, so everything's looking good. I'm going to go ahead and cut my brace off. Now I don't want to cut my brace and the fender at exactly the same spot right here because it'll make it tougher to line up. So what I'll do is I'll actually move up the fender. I don't need to go all the way to the top with this, although I suppose you could, but I'll just go up a little bit of a way, and then I'll be able to put my inner brace in and line it up a lot easier. Okay, so placement of your hole right here. where the fender bolts onto the cab, we need to make sure that stays in the same position. So what we'll do is just take some measurements, go up pretty far, and make a pretty good mark in here. You can scribe it with your cutting wheel, and this way we can help keep the placement of this in the right place. Okay, so we got the holes right here that'll match up with the holes right here too. You can also use those to help line it up. Okay, so I've measured 14 inches this way and 14 inches this way. Okay, so I always like to try new tricks when I'm doing this kind of stuff. So I think what I'm going to do to help keep things lined up is that I'm going to cut right through the center of this hole, the third one up, and I'll cut right through the center of this hole, and then hopefully this will help line things up. And always save your leftover pieces like this, because the curvature right here or the 90 degrees right in here, different things like that, you might be able to use this different places in the future. Everything looks pretty nice. So here on the inside edge where the fender flap's over, there's a few spot welds on here that we're going to go ahead and drill out, and then we're going to take the edge of this and just slightly pry it open so we can go ahead and get our the remainder of the bracing off all the way. Okay, so this is what a spot weld cutter looks like. But this little pin right here, it doesn't always stay where you want it when you're starting to drill, and it'll dance around some. So I like to get a small tip, 1/8 inch, and then do a little pilot hole for this to be able to guide into. So we just keep gently prying until we get it off. Don't get too aggressive with it. So 1962 Chevy engines, they came with this gray, but it wasn't available at Pep Boys and all those kinds of things. So just shot a little paint right here just so I can see what it looks like, and so I can show Eric over in Hong Kong what it looks like. This is what I'm thinking about shooting the engine right here. So I've got this cleaned up here. Now I'll take some rust converting paint, and I'll paint this area here, because of course I'm not going to be able to get to it after I put the brace on. Now the rest of the fender will be cleaning up later, and getting some rust preventing paint that's on stuff on there too, but I'll be showing you that later. I want to make sure my brace is in the right spot. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get it in here. I'm going to measure, I'm going to make sure everything looks copacetic, and I'm just going to stick one tack weld right here in the middle, and then I'm going to go ahead and take it out to the truck and make sure everything lines up, and maneuver it around a little bit, make sure it's exactly where I want it, and then I can go ahead and finish off my welds here. The original braces, they had a fine thread bolt that went in the back here, but this uses a coarse thread bolt. So we'll get one, and we'll actually put this up on the fender and put the bolt right through it just to make sure it's in the right spot. So I'll be right back. Okay, so everything looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and get a couple more tack welds on this, just to keep it all nice and secure. Now, if you're a little bit worried about whether things are going to line up, just go ahead and tack weld this assembly together, and then after you get it lined up and everything looks good, then you can finish off the welds. I'm pretty confident that everything's going to be copacetic, so I'm just going to finish this off. So with my brace on, I'm just going to double check my curvature here and make sure everything looks copacetic. Everything's looking good, so we'll just keep on going. So now I'll work on my outside piece here. And I'm just going to lay this right on top and get a marker. And now I can see where I've made my marks. Now I'm not going to cut it right there. I'm going to go up about an inch and then I'll cut it out there. I'll make this a little bit larger than I need. Down in the corner right here, in order to get this edge to fold over, I'm going to need to cut it right down there. So you can see I did a little cut right here, and then I got a little cut right here, kind of a relief cut that'll make it easier to fold over. So I'm going to take this edge and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to roll it over now a little bit. The reason I'm going to be doing that is because when you roll this edge over, it'll kind of move. If you hammer at the top too much, then you can get this whole edge to kind of roll in. So usually what I do is I just get it to roll a little bit and then I hammer down, keeping this edge nice and straight. So now when I slip this on, this edge right here will be a little bit more accurate. If I weld it all up and then I try to fold it over, it may not line up as well. So now I'll slowly trim this down and I'll get it a little bit closer to being lined up. But I'm just going to take off a little bit until I'm sure it's looking good. I need to make sure this line maintains nice and even, so I simply take my piece and get it up here and get a straight edge to line it up to. So I'll get it up here, I'm going to have it pretty much lined up. I'm just going to get a little tack weld on it. As you can see, I didn't like that. No big deal. Just cut it off and put it where you want it. Tack weld it again. After you're sure it's cool, then we're just going to get a couple of tack welds to hold it solid. Okay, so I've got 3 or 4 tack welds holding this piece on nice and solid. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut this last remaining edge right here, and I'll cut through both metal at the same time, and this way it will be exactly where I want it. So now all of my areas mate up right nice and even like. I'm going to go ahead and grind some of the old paint off, and then I can get some more tack welds in. Okay, so everything's looking good. A lot of times when you're doing this bottom down here, it can get bowed in or bowed out. So that's why you have to keep on looking for the curvature to make sure that it's mating up nice and neat. So this right here is a pretty useful tool. You can pick these up at Harbor Freight, some miscellaneous metal places. There's just a pin that goes down here in the bottom. So what you do is you just take this and you put it in between the 2 pieces of metal. You put this in the bottom and then you tighten it up and it'll keep everything lined up. So keep in mind that when you weld on metal, it will shrink and it'll warp. So you want to not just weld. You want to hit some tacks about 3 or 4 inches apart, let them cool down, then you go ahead and fill in a little bit more until it's all done. don't want to get any tack welds too close to our clamp here, because if you do, when the metal shrinks, it'll make it real difficult to pull out. So just keep your welds a little bit further away from it, a couple of inches or so, and then you'll be able to pull these out a lot easier. Constantly feel with your hand to make sure that everything's feeling nice and even. If it gets a little bit off, stop, get it even, then go ahead and continue your welding. If you go ahead and just keep welding thinking you're going to hammer it straighter later, you can, but it's going to be a lot harder. Okay, so let's take a look at what we got. So you can see how this looks. I just got the tack welds on here, nice and light. I double check, make sure everything's lined up. I'm going to go ahead and wherever there's a large gap, then I'll get a tack weld right in the center. And then I'll just keep going in the center of these until the gaps start to fill up. Then I'll just simply take and go on the end of a weld like this and go zot, 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 zot until it fills in. This edge here, you'll notice, is not quite lined up yet. We have to get all of this welded up first before we can go ahead and round off this and mate it up to the edge perfect. So like I said, when you weld metal, when you get metal hot, it shrinks. But when you hammer on metal, it expands. So we'll do a couple of welds, it'll shrink, we'll hammer on dolly, it'll expand it a little bit, and then it'll even out in the middle there, so to speak. But make sure you don't do too much welding or too much hammering. You're just going to do nice and light like. While I'm waiting for my welds to cool down, I can take my edges and roll them over and flatten these out a little bit better. Okay, so now I got some welds built up. I'm going to go ahead and grind them down some. If you just go ahead and weld all this up and then start to grind it, it takes a little bit longer and it's a little bit harder to do. I'm also not going to use a small wheel grinder like this, because if I do, it's easier to get it uneven. What I'll do is I'll use a larger disc like this, and what this will do for me is, since it's covering a larger area, it'll be able to show me some high and low spots that I might have and not see. So here on my edge, I've got it all welded up. It's nice and firm. Now I can take this edge right here and roll it over. Okay, the fender's all done. Let's take a look. So that's what it's done. So everything's looking pretty nice. Feels pretty smooth. So inside looks like this. Now I'll generally grind the inside right here a little bit, but I'm not going to grind it a lot. The welds that are going to be on here, they'll help make it beefier, so I don't grind too much of that off right there. Now right here at the bottom, we're going to want to drill some holes right here and then weld these up. They'll be like a spot weld, so to speak. And then of course these fenders are tendency to rust right here, so what some guys do is drill a nice big fat hole in the bottom, either right here or right in here or both, so that dirt and stuff won't get in there. So this very last bottom right here, before you drill the holes and you weld it all up, you might just want to put it on the truck one more time and check to see if this is lining up really well. Sometimes you'll need to hammer this up or down, so I'm going to check that first, then I'll finish that off. So on the bottom, what I'm going to be doing is drilling through the first piece of metal and just a little bit into the second piece, and then I'll weld that up. So now I'm going to go ahead and protect all of our new metal from rusting again. I'll go get some prep ball. This gets off any grease or dirt that might be left on there, and then I'll go ahead and just shoot some inexpensive top coat on there. Just a 99-cent can of paint if you want. A lot of guys will shoot primer on there and they'll think, okay, it won't rust now, but unfortunately primer will take the moisture out of the air and it'll put it right onto your metal. So you can't just do primer, you've got to put a top coat on there too. I'm just going to do a light top coat on this just to keep it from rusting. I'm going to be cleaning this stuff up and prepping it a little bit more and doing a little bit of body work and painting it, so I'll be showing you all that a little bit later though. Stuff's pretty simple. You just spray it on, leave it on for a minute or so, and then wipe it off. We're all done for the day. And you can see that that looks pretty good. We'll need very little body work to finish that off. So, that's it for the day. We went out to CAE and we picked up our igniter. I'll show you how to install that a little bit later. We drove all the way out to Brothers in Corona and picked up a ton of stuff. And we got our front fender here already taken care of. So tomorrow, if the weather's nice and it's not raining, I'll go ahead and paint the engine. If the weather's not cooperating, we'll be doing a little bit more rush repair. So we'll see y'all then.